The Echoes of Blackwood Manor, a Western Gothic horror story. The Bargain in the Rain. The rain in Washington state doesn't wash things clean. It presses them down. It pushes the sky into the earth until the horizon is nothing but a smear of grey bruise. Thomas Wake knew this, yet he signed the papers anyway. The office of Mr. Higgins, the real estate agent, smelled of stale coffee and fear. Not the acute fear of a man with a gun to his head, but the low-level gnawing anxiety of someone trying to rid themselves of a curse. The pen scratched loudly against the parchment. "You're getting a steal, Mr. Wake," Higgins said, his eyes darting to the clock on the wall. 6 bedrooms, 4 baths, 5 acres of dense pine forest. For this price, it's unheard of. "And the history?" Thomas asked, pausing with the pen hovering over the final signature line. "Why has it been empty since the 90s? Higgins swallowed hard. His Adam's apple bobbed nervously. "Structural issues, probate courts, you know how it is. Just old houses breathe, Thomas, they settle. Don't let the locals fill your head with ghost stories." Thomas signed. He didn't care about ghosts. He cared about silence. As a writer whose last 2 novels had flopped, and whose wife had left him for a man who sold insurance, Thomas needed isolation. He needed the kind of quiet that was loud enough to drown out his own thoughts. Driving up to Blackwood Manor an hour later, the isolation felt heavy. The house sat atop a jagged hill, surrounded by a sea of black pines that swayed violently in the wind. The structure was a Victorian monstrosity, a jagged silhouette of turrets and gables that looked like broken teeth biting into the sky. The windows were dark, unblinking eyes. As Thomas killed the engine, the silence rushed in. No birds, no crickets, just the rhythmic drumming of rain on the metal roof and the wind howling through the trees. It sounded like a choir of people screaming from a great distance. "Perfect," Thomas whispered. The architecture of silence. The first 3 days were deceptively peaceful. Thomas unpacked his life into the dusty rooms. The house was cold, a bone-deep chill that no amount of firewood could chase away. The furniture that came with the house was draped in white sheets, looking like phantom guests frozen in conversation. He set up his typewriter in the study on the 2nd floor. It was a grand room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with rotting encyclopedias and medical texts from the 1920s. The wallpaper was a deep crimson, peeling at the corners to reveal the grey plaster beneath, like dead skin shedding from a wound. It started on Tuesday night. Thomas was sleeping in the master bedroom when he woke up. His eyes snapped open, heart hammering against his ribs. He looked at the digital clock on the nightstand. 03:17 a.m. The room was silent, but the air felt charged, like the moments before a thunderstorm. He sat up, straining his ears. Scritch, scratch, scritch. It was coming from the hallway. A dry, rhythmic sound, like fingernails dragging across wallpaper. Thomas grabbed the heavy flashlight he kept by the bed and walked to the door. He swung it open, the beam of light cutting through the darkness of the corridor. "Hello?" he called out. "Is someone there?" Nothing. Just the long, empty hallway stretching into the dark. The portraits on the wall stern-faced men and women from a bygone era seemed to watch him with disapproval. He walked down the hall, checking the floorboards. No rats, no mice. He was about to turn back when he saw it. The door to the library, the room he had just set up his office in, was slightly ajar. He knew he had closed it. He always closed it to keep the draft out. Thomas pushed the door open. The library was empty, but on his desk, his typewriter sat in the center of a pool of moonlight. He walked over to it. He hadn't typed anything yet. He was still in the outlining phase, but on the fresh white page he had loaded into the roller earlier that day, a single sentence was typed in black ink. "They are hungry. The reflection in the cellar." By Friday, the isolation had turned from a comfort into a cage. The rain hadn't stopped, not once. It hammered against the glass day and night, a relentless assault. Thomas tried to work, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he found himself obsessing over the house. He started hearing footsteps upstairs when he was in the kitchen. He heard whispering indistinct overlapping voices coming from the ventilation grates. He decided to investigate the source of the draft that made the kitchen so unbearably cold. He pulled back a rug in the pantry and found a trapdoor. The handle was rusted iron, cold to the touch. With a groan of effort, he heaved it open. A smell wafted up metallic, copper-like, mixed with the sweet stench of rotting flowers. He descended the wooden stairs, the flashlight beam shaking in his hand. The basement was a labyrinth of stone and shadow. Old furniture, broken dolls, and crates marked medical supplies 1924 littered the floor. In the far corner, covered by a thick velvet tarp, stood a massive object. Thomas approached it. He felt a magnetic pull, a sickness in his stomach that told him to run, but his legs wouldn't obey. He pulled the tarp down. It was a mirror. A full-length gilded mirror with intricate carvings of serpents and screaming faces along the frame. The glass was old, slightly warped. Thomas looked at his reflection. He looked tired. Bags under his eyes, unshaven stubble. Then his reflection blinked. Thomas froze. He hadn't blinked. He stared, paralyzed with horror. The Thomas in the mirror smiled, a slow, widening grin that stretched too far, revealing too many teeth. "Who are you?" Thomas whispered. The reflection didn't speak. It just raised a hand and pointed behind Thomas into the darkness of the cellar. Thomas spun around, shining his light into the corner. Nothing. Just shadows. When he turned back to the mirror, his reflection was normal again. Just a scared man in a dark basement. But written in the dust on the surface of the glass, from the inside, was a word. Run, the Journal of Dr. Blackman. That night, Thomas couldn't sleep. He returned to the library and began pulling books off the shelves, looking for answers. Behind a row of medical textbooks, he found a hollow space in the wall. Inside was a leather-bound journal. The leather felt strange, too soft, almost oily. He sat by the fire and opened it. It belonged to Dr. Arthur Blackman, the original owner of the manor. The entries began in 1924. October 14th, 1924. The isolation is necessary for the great work. The city is too loud. The spirits cannot speak over the noise of the machines. Here, in the pines, the veil is thin. I can hear them scratching at the other side. November 2nd, 1924. My daughter Sarah says she sees people in the woods, tall thin things that sway with the wind. I told her it is just the trees, but I saw them too. They have no faces, they only have hunger. December 10th, 1924. The mirror is a door. I have made a mistake. I thought I was inviting knowledge in. Instead, I have invited them out. They mimic us. They steal our voices. They steal our faces. Yesterday, I saw Sarah in the garden, but Sarah was sitting next to me at dinner. The thing in the garden, it looked at me and it screamed with Sarah's voice. December 24th, 1924. We are trapped. The snow is too deep. The doors, I cannot open the doors. The house has sealed itself. It is digesting us. If you are reading this, do not look into the corners of the room. They like to hide in the angles where the walls meet. God help us. The last pages were stuck together with a brown dried substance that Thomas realized with a jolt of nausea was blood. The mimicry. The power went out on Sunday. The storm had intensified, turning the day into a twilight gloom. Thomas was in the kitchen trying to find matches when he heard it. Thomas, are you there? It was his wife's voice, or rather, his ex-wife's voice. Claire. She sounded exactly as she had the day she left, cold, detached yet familiar. Claire, Thomas shouted, spinning around. How did you get in? The voice came from the living room. Thomas, come here. I want to show you something. He ran into the living room. It was empty. Up here, Thomas, the voice called from the top of the stairs. He looked up. Standing at the top of the landing was him. It wasn't Claire. It was an exact copy of Thomas, wearing the same flannel shirt, the same jeans. But the copy was standing wrong. Its arms were too long, hanging down past its knees. Its neck was bent at an impossible angle, as if broken. What are you? Thomas screamed, backing away. The creature opened its mouth, and Claire's voice came out, perfect and sweet. I'm your legacy, darling. I'm the end of the story. The creature took a step down, then another. Its movements were jerky, like a claymation figure. Thomas turned and ran for the front door. He grabbed the handle and pulled. Locked. He twisted the deadbolt, but it wouldn't budge. The metal fused to the frame. He grabbed a heavy umbrella from the stand and smashed it against the window next to the door. Clang! The glass didn't break. It rang like solid steel. The house had hardened. The siege. There was nowhere to go but up or down. The creature was blocking the stairs. Thomas ran into the kitchen and locked the door. He shoved the heavy oak table against it. From the other side, the pounding began. Bang, bang, bang. Thomas, let me in, the creature said. Now it sounded like Mr. Higgins, the real estate agent. We just need to sign a few more papers. Thomas backed away, panting. He looked at the pantry, the basement. It was a trap, he knew it. But the creature was breaking through the kitchen door. The wood was splintering. Through the cracks he could see pale, white skin and eyes that were nothing but black voids. He opened the trapdoor and slid down into the darkness of the cellar. He pulled the door shut above him and locked it. He was alone in the dark. Silence returned. He turned on his flashlight. The beam hit the mirror in the corner. The mirror was no longer reflecting the room. It was glowing with a faint, pulsating red light. And inside the mirror he saw them. Hundreds of them, people, Dr. Blackman, his daughter Sarah, Mr. Higgins, dozens of others he didn't recognize. They were all standing in a grey, misty void, their mouths open in a silent scream, banging against the glass from the other side. And among them was Thomas. A version of Thomas looking pale and dead, his eyes hollowed out. "Join us," the voices whispered. Not from the mirror, but from the shadows behind him. Thomas spun around. The shadows in the corners of the basement were detaching themselves from the walls. They rose up, tall and spindly, forming shapes that defied anatomy. The final entry. Thomas realized the truth then. The story he was writing, the writer's block, the cheap price of the house, it was all part of the digestion process. The house didn't just eat flesh. It ate potential. It ate creativity. It ate the soul before it took the body. He backed up until his back hit the cold glass of the mirror. The creatures were closing in. They didn't have faces, just smooth skin where features should be. But they were whispering his own thoughts back to him. "You are a failure, Thomas. Nobody reads your books. You died the moment you signed that paper." Thomas felt a cold hand grab his shoulder. It came from behind him. From the mirror. He looked back, the reflection. Thomas had reached out of the glass. Its grip was iron. "Let go!" Thomas yelled, slashing at the arm with his flashlight. But the creatures in front of him lunged. He was caught between the mirror world and the monsters of the manor. "I will not be your story," Thomas screamed. He raised the heavy flashlight, and with every ounce of desperate strength he had left, he didn't hit the monsters. He turned and smashed the mirror. Crack! A spiderweb fracture appeared. The reflection Thomas shrieked, a sound that was not human. The red glow flickered. Thomas hit it again, and again smash. The glass exploded outward. A vortex of wind howled through the basement, pulling everything towards the broken frame. The shadows screamed as they were sucked into the jagged void where the glass used to be. Thomas held onto a support beam, his feet lifting off the ground. The suction was incredible. The house itself seemed to groan in pain. The walls cracked, dust falling like snow. "You cannot leave!" the voices roared, sounding like the grinding of tectonic plates. "Watch me!" Thomas gasped. The floor beneath him gave way. Epilogue. The new listing 3 months later. The sun was shining in forks, a rare occurrence. A young couple, Jessica and Mike, parked their Subaru in the driveway of the renovated Victorian home. "It's beautiful," Jessica said, looking up at the freshly painted facade, "and the price is amazing." A new real estate agent, a young woman named Sarah, who looked remarkably like the old portraits found in the attic, though no one noticed, smiled warmly. "It's a gem," she said. "The previous owner left unexpectedly. But the bank renovated everything. It's ready for a fresh start." "What happened to him?" Mike asked, looking at the dark windows of the second floor. "Oh, he was a writer," the agent said dismissively. "He just disappeared. Probably went to Mexico to find inspiration. Writers are eccentric like that. They walked inside. The house smelled of fresh paint and lemons. "I love it," Jessica said, spinning in the grand hallway. "I feel like I could be really creative here." In the basement, behind a newly built drywall partition, a shard of mirror lay buried in the dirt. On its surface, a single eye, frantic and terrified, blinked in the darkness. And upstairs, in the library, on the brand new desk, a typewriter sat waiting. The wind outside picked up, whistling through the black pines, scritch, scratch. The house was hungry again. The end.